ready for another edition of Just Say No. This is Just Say No. This is Just Say No Art. In Just Say No Art, we're going to reflect on the artistic value of protest. And that art and music and theater even and dance can be a great form of protest. I hope you agree, and I hope Just Say No is bringing that point across. Thank you. Let's go into our program. All right, welcome to Just Say No. And I hope you enjoyed the intro music, because this is going to be a special episode. We're going to do 2 episodes like this. The West Bank and the Gaza. But we're going to perform prayer and music and a little poetry. We're going to send spiritual energy.
So I worked for 5 summers with a counseling center in Ramallah, which is in the occupied West Bank, and I got to see kids and families, and I got to talk to a lot of therapists there who worked with kids. I was consulting with them about the intersection of trauma and developmental disabilities, because I work with a lot of kids who are challenged here, both by trauma and developmental issues. So I'm especially drawn to kids, and a lot of my poems are about the children who are suffering unbelievably. So this one is about a child whose story went viral, as it should have. Her name was Hind Rajab, and she was 6 years old, and her story is right here in the poem. This was day 291 for Hind. I am listening for your voice, but it grows more and more faint. You are a child in a car that has been fired at by a tank. You are 6. Everyone in the car, your cousin, your uncle, everyone has been killed. I am not the woman from the Red Crescent who stayed on the phone with you for hours, who directed the ambulance to your car, who heard when the ambulance was also fired at. I am not your mother, who was briefly able to speak with you, who told you it was okay to wipe the blood on your face with your dress, which you were afraid of getting dirty. I am a woman thousands of miles away, months from that day. I heard the Red Crescent worker trying to keep you with her, trying to keep you alive. I heard your voice over the phone growing softer, softer. She knew by then that the ambulance had been bombed, that the drivers were dead, that they would not come for you. I am a woman who could have done nothing for you, who is trying never to forget you, who is listening every day for your voice, afraid I'll lose you, afraid your voice will be silenced within me. You know, over and over, the people of Gaza somebody even today, Abu Bakr Ahmed Abad, who's someone who works for the Electronic Intifada, he said to Nora, the most important thing you can all do for us is not to forget us, to keep telling our stories. And so these songs and these poems are an effort in that direction.
It's happening now, like it has before, at the universities, in a time of war. Put people together, they'll communicate, talk about things like college and state, talk about the research that built the Iron Dome, talk about their relatives starving back at home, talk about tuition and where the money's spent and where all the buildings in Gaza went. Wake up each morning and the headlines say how many hundreds of Palestinians died today, how many thousands were killed in the past week. People get together, people speak. The newscasters say with surety the campuses lack security. Meanwhile, across the ocean wide, Palestinian genocide. People are saying they won't leave till they win, and then the police are sent in, beaten and arrested, staff and students, and to try to silence this growing movement, they're punishing people for making it known that the direct connection can be easily shown. How the investments of this institution are funding another final solution. Where it goes is anyone's guess. After all, this is the U.S. Battles have been lost and won, but with bombs being dropped every day by the ton, with the orphaned and famished beneath the sky, waiting for the moment when it's their turn to die. Some people just can't look away. They have to set up a tent on the campus and say, boycott, sanction, and divest. 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 Boycott, sanction, and divest.
Through the poetry. And to help us do that today is our good friend Anita Barrows. Anita Barrows, she's sort of related to Nora Barrows Friedman somehow, but Anita is a hero of mine. Anita is a marvelous poet, a translator, an extraordinary translator of Rilke.
And it was so wonderful to hear that song, and I have been thinking about how poetry and music are essential to any resistance movement. They not only keep our spirits alive, but they are forms of resistance in themselves. So the first poem I'm going to...
And tell us what you've been doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, at the beginning of this genocide, I felt so helpless, and like a lot of people, I asked myself, what can I do? The thing I've been doing longest in my life before I became a psychotherapist, before I became Nora's mother, has been writing poetry. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to write a poem every day. And I've been inspired by several things. I read the Electronic Intifada, my daughter's journal that she And another inspiration for these poems is a Palestinian poet and professor of English literature, wonderful man. He was a journalist as well, who wrote for the Electronic Intifada, and was murdered by Israel on December 6th, Rifat al-Adair. And so the first poem I'm going to read is a poem I wrote for him. Who am I to tell your story? I am not your sister, your mother, your student. I did not sit with you in the dark, waiting for news we did not want to hear. I did not watch when your child was born, when you taught her to read. I did not answer her when she asked if planes could destroy your house even when the lights were darkened. The lights are all darkened now for weeks. I did not hold your head when your brother was killed, nor walk with you to the ruined place where he was buried. I did not smell the smells of burning, of flesh rotting, flesh eaten by maggots. Who am I but a listener, a gatherer of sounds, a woman standing in line at a shop where others buy bread, milk, vegetables, telling myself I don't know whether I have words to make a narrative, to braid memory into memory, invent a room, a table, a conversation, telling myself, and the planes overhead are not from me the groaning of engines, the explosions, telling myself I have never had anything to offer but words, and that must be enough.
Well, when the genocide started, I was also just compelled to write about it every day, and I didn't feel like I could get through a day without writing about it. At least it felt like something I could do. And this is one of the songs I wrote that is not actually about Gaza. It's about one of the closest historical parallel to the genocide that I am aware of, which is the uprising and deportations and famine of 1862 in the state of Minnesota. And I thought it was particularly a good thing to make these comparisons because, for one thing, it's one of the main talking points of the Hasbara trolls, which are constantly attacking me online. I got 27,000 insults in 1 month in April. Facebook congratulated me for the increased engagement, but they like to talk about, you guys killed all your Indians, so what are you complaining about? We're just doing the same thing, and they'd have a point if it weren't for the case that most of the people who are opposed to the genocide there are opposed to genocide more generally as well. But this is the Ballad of Little Crow. He heard that they were on their way when the settlers came. Little Crow knew that nothing now would ever be the same. The treaties he agreed to, signed under duress, he watched as the land of the Indians was less and less and less. His people were left with a patch only 20 miles wide, a little bit of land by the Mississippi riverside, a little bit of land with a very uncertain fate once this place called Minnesota became a state. Little Crow went all the way to Washington, D.C., where he appealed his people's case to the highest authority. Then they took away half the land allotted for his kin, and then even that little patch saw more settlers moving in. Little Crow watched them hunting and logging all the trees. He watched his people growing hungry. He watched the children freeze when their meager crops failed. He went in search of aid from the Indian agents who had grown rich from the money that they'd made. What should have fed the people lined their pockets instead. Lincoln sent an investigator, and that's just what he said. The standard was corruption, treaties made to be broken, along with comforting words duplicitously spoken. Little Crow told his people, words bitter on his tongue. The agent had said his people could eat grass and their own dung. Peaceful coexistence could clearly last no more. He gathered up an army and set out to go to war. His warriors raided the stores of food that should have been theirs. They took guns and ammunition, put soldiers in their crosshairs. They won one battle after another, drove all the settlers out until divisions heading south were given a new route. Little Crow's uprising was finally suppressed, and the Indians of Minnesota were sent far off to the west. Whether part of the uprising, to the authorities it didn't matter, and they died of famine and disease. Little Crow was killed picking berries with his son, shot down by a settler out hunting with his shotgun. For handing in his scalp, the hunter made a dandy sum, and his bones were displayed in a museum. Little Crow was a leader, and it seems to me he made decisions when every option was impossibility. He had the choice to starve and die on what was left of the land, but he decided it was time to make a stand. He heard that they were on their way, and when the settlers came, Little Crow knew that nothing now would ever be the same.
The child is reciting an alphabet of loss. Her father, her brother, her uncle, another uncle, her cat, her baby sister, 2 cousins, 3 cousins, 6. She names them, counts them, makes a little line on a scrap of paper for each one. Her cousin she played dolls with, a line. Her uncle who taught her how to read, a line. Her father who only days ago carried her on his shoulders. Some of them are not even buried, not even found from under the rubble. But there they are on the page, lines. And she will save the paper, she says to the girl squatting beside her in the dust, so she can add more lines when she needs to. Yeah, the parents don't even know if it's their own children's body parts they're burying. This is another poem for Rafat al-Adayir. I saw him read when he came here to give readings for one of the books that he edited of writers, young writers from Gaza. And I have a photograph of him in my house, and this poem is about that photograph. A year ago, Rafat was picking strawberries. I have a picture of him smiling, wearing a red shirt, holding a tray of strawberries so ripe you can taste them from the photograph. Did he take them home, eat a few of them in his car, share them with his daughter who would learn weeks later that she was pregnant, save some for the younger ones, for his wife, for a student who would drop by later to show him a poem? An ordinary day, the sun so bright it made the smell of strawberries so intense the car would hold it for hours. Rafat driving, thinking of poetry, of walking on the beach. Summer, Rafat alive, his daughter, his yet-to-be-born grandson, who would live not quite 3 months, the field not burned, abundant with strawberries.
And the Israelis, this is an act of genocide. I say the Israelis, I have to always remind myself that no Americans, no genocide. Genocide Joe earned his name. And frankly, I think they had to shuffle him out because they couldn't elect a genocidist, but they still can ship the weapons over.
On the 25th of February, 2024, in protest against a U.S.-sponsored genocidal war, as bombs were falling and exploding all around, burning up the bodies of the children on the ground, huddling in tents and just waiting to die. This young man could no longer stand to hear the cries. On International Drive in Washington, D.C., a young airman walked up to the Israeli embassy as mothers buried babies who had no milk within, as white phosphorus munitions burned off people's skin, as the troops were firing on those trying to find bread, as the body count was building up to 30,000 dead. Dressed in his fatigues, there on Embassy Row, he announced into the camera this was where he'd meant to go. An act of desperation, and one designed to share the horrors of the crimes being committed over there, like a mirror to the world, so no one can look away from what's happening in Gaza every minute of each day. He stood in front of the building, as ready as he'd get. He put his phone down so he could live stream it on the net. When he lit the fire, on the day he chose to die, with no way to stop the slaughter, at least he had to try. As the flames rose up, yellow, red, and blue, did he look up at the cross and wonder what would Jesus do? The Secret Service came to point a gun at Aaron's face. The airman didn't move. He just stood in place. He'd come to make a spectacle. That was understood. If he couldn't stop the war, he'd do what he could as his body burned before us in an unmistakable sign. Again and again he shouted out, "Free Palestine!" On the 25th of February, 2024,
David Rovics, writing about, in response to, the extraordinary genocide that continues to be sustained. Anita, 20 billion more for shredded bodies. I mean, you can imagine as good as anybody what this is going to do to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of children who are witnessing this firsthand.
It's unbearable what it's going to do to them. I mean, apart from the fact that many of them have lost their limbs and their lifelong dreams, little kids who dream of being athletes, and many of them have lost their parents. I read somewhere today, and I can't remember where I read it, but somebody said, in response to this song of David's, somebody said, "I can understand what Aaron Bushnell did a lot better than I can understand the people who just go about their daily business and ignore this genocide."
Yes.
That's so powerful. Okay, here are some more poems about children. Day 169. I made a note about shoes. The children are shoeless. Small feet make their way over broken ground, torn wire, jutting bits of concrete. Why would you say be careful? They dig in the rubble for something to eat. There's nothing. There has been nothing for weeks. How can they still be walking, moving? Where are their shoes? A mother frantically looks for her child's shoes, but she has gone mad with hunger, with grief. It's her child she's looking for. I made a note about feet. How perfect they are when a child is born. The toes 10 pearls. How soft before they touch the earth. Day 210. In the long afternoon, 2 sisters are looking for birds. This happens while bombs fall on their neighborhood. One still has her binoculars. The other carries a small worn notebook. They have done this for years, scouted for birds, named them, documented time, place, season. Do birds still fly when the air is filled with warplanes? What do they do when the trees they nested in have been destroyed? How do they find their way from places where life is as it was to this ravaged land with no familiar markers? Two birds cross, dividing blue from blue. If the sisters don't look straight ahead at their fallen city, they can almost pretend the birds will lead their way home.
David?
Anita, you're amazing, I have to say. Here's a song called If a Song Could Raise an Army. If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth. If a song could take down borders, take down fences, make them fall, liberate all those imprisoned, kept behind the ghetto walls. If a song could stop the bombs, so the next might be the last. If a song could change the future, so it won't be like the past. If a song could be a missile fired from the Iron Dome, if it could protect the children, keep them safe within their homes, if a song could raise an army and transport it on command, take us all to Palestine to defend the Holy Land. If a song could be concrete and put to use to rebuild, if it might turn back the clock, bring back all the babies killed. If a song could be a blueprint, instructions to show us how. If a song could change the world, then let us sing it now. If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth.
David Rovics with Camilla Emanuel. You're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. We are honoring those who have been destroyed and shredded by this ongoing genocide funded by the United States. With David and Camilla is also our good friend Anita Barros.
I have another poem about Hint. I can't stop thinking about this child. For one thing, she looks a lot like my younger daughter did when she was 6 years old. So this was day 307, Hind once again.
And let me say, this is going to be the last poem from Anita Barros. Let me signal to David that when Anita finishes, why don't you come in and play us out with your best shot. Okay?
You got it.
In the photograph, she is wearing a black graduation cap outlined in gold. It sits at a little angle, as though she had been running just before someone took the picture, the hat not made to fit squarely on her small head, her dark curls. Her eyes shine. She is proud, you can tell, to have finished kindergarten. So proud to have learned to read, to write her name, other words. When was this taken? In June, 7 months before her death by bombing in a car on a road the ambulance couldn't get to, since it too had been bombed. You can tell from the photograph how bright she was, how vibrant, how full of mischief, how she would use everything she had learned those last hours to try to keep herself alive.
Anita Burroughs, David. Thank you, all three of you, for bringing this to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio.
Thank you, Dennis.
In the places they reported, if you listen to the news, you'll hear the press conferences and the words they choose to describe the facts on the ground. On the Gaza Strip, you can hear the measured phrases, see the trembling lips, uttering words so rarely spoken, eyes open wide as one official after the other speaks of genocide. From the head of each department, you can hear the powerless pleas. The next wave of the carnage will be famine and disease. As the fighter jets rain missiles down from way up in the sky, as the tower blocks collapse with each mission that they fly, as the hospitals are targeted along with everything.
You're listening to 94.1 KPFA Berkeley, 89.3 KPFB Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, 97.5 K248BR in Santa Cruz, 94.3 K232FZ Monterey, and online at kpfa.org.
This week on Talk World Radio, we are hearing and discussing poetry about Gaza. Our guest, Anita Burroughs, is a poet, a novelist, translator into English from French, German, and Italian. She has 18 published books and a 19th on its way. She and Joanna Macy have translated 4 volumes of the works of Rainer Maria Rilke, and many of their translated poems have been used in weddings and other ceremonies and set to music. Anita is a clinical psychologist, teaches in a psychology doctoral program, the Wright Institute, Berkeley, where she is a tenured institute professor. She maintains a clinical practice where she sees children and adults with a history of trauma or neurodivergence. Anita Barrows worked for 5 summers at the Palestinian Counseling Center in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, and she has had a long-standing commitment to the liberation of Palestine. Anita Barrows, welcome to Talk World Radio.
Thank you, David. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for writing a poem every single day about Gaza, which I want to talk about. But first, I want to mention that when I asked you to come on this program, I didn't realize your daughter had already been on, Nora Barrows Friedman, who works with Electronic Intifada, right?
That's right, exactly. In fact, when you wrote to me, I have to admit I did not know you. And so I looked up your website and I saw, oh, well, he interviewed my kids.
So you'll do anything your daughter does. That's a little risky there.
Almost anything.
So who gets the activism from whom? Which way did you travel?
Well, I think I've been an activist since I was in high school. I was in high school in the early '60s, and the Vietnam War was happening, and the civil rights movement was a very big commitment in my life. And through the civil rights movement, I really became an anti-Zionist in my Jewish childhood. I was raised to be a Zionist.
Most people from that generation, it didn't pass along to the next generation. Somehow in your family, it did.
It did, yeah. I'm lucky. My daughter Nora and her sister Viva, who is my younger daughter, came to demonstrations with me, when they were very little. We had the Iraq War happening. I made sure they knew that to me the most important value was compassion for other living beings. And I feel like, if there's anything I wanted to give my kids, it was a sense of justice and solidarity.
And did they go with you? You spent 5 summers in Ramallah. Did you bring the kids, and what did you do there?
Right. Well, I spent the summers in Ramallah after they had grown up. And Nora was actually already by 2005 working for KPFA radio. And I'm not certain about this. She may have already started at least doing some writing for the Electronic Intifada. So, she was well on her way. But I worked there in my capacity as a psychologist. I work, as you mentioned, with trauma and neurodivergence. And what I was consulting with the Palestinian Counseling Center people about was the convergence, the intersection of chronic, ongoing, unabated trauma as they've experienced in Palestine, since 48, with neurodevelopmental disabilities, because they see a lot of kids who, were born to malnourished mothers or were born under very stressful circumstances and came into this world without everything they should have had. And so there are a lot of kids with neurodevelopmental disabilities there. And we work together looking at that convergence.
And you've been able to help some of them a bit, I guess.
I hope so. Yeah.
I hope so too. It's great that you've tried. You also mentioned something you've been working on called "We Are Not Numbers." Can you explain what that is?
Yes, it's a wonderful group. It was started by, among other people, Rifat Al-Arair, Dr. Rifat Al-Arair, who was a poet and a professor of English literature who was assassinated by Israel on December 6, 2023. He was a great inspiration to me and to thousands of others around the world.
He
We
has
are
a
not.
book out, correct?
Yes, yes,
Posthumous
just
book.
recently, exactly, which I think became a bestseller. It's quite something. If I should die, if I must die, you must live to
Tell the story.
tell the story. Exactly, which I really do take as marching orders. So he, in his work as an English professor, trained many, many, many young students in Gaza at the Islamic University in Gaza City, which now, of course, doesn't exist physically anymore, to write. And he felt that writing and telling the story were very, very important. And We Are Not Numbers, as he founded it with some others, pairs young people writing in Gaza in English with writers around the world who write in English so that we get to be their mentors. And it's a really extraordinary organization. I have kept up with two of the students whose writing I've mentored. We write to each other every day. I am concerned when I don't hear from them on a given day about what might have happened to them. And one of them actually comments on my daily poems because my poems go out, on a website. So she reads them and she writes me comments about them, which I just love.
Is there a way for English language writers who are listening right now to volunteer to be part of that?
Go to the We Are Not Numbers website, and there's a place on the website where you can request an interview and submit your resume and all that, and ask to volunteer. It's a great organization.
It reminds me a little bit of the saying "We are not bug splat." An artists in Pakistan put a giant picture of a child on the ground for the drone operators to see,
Yes.
who referred to their victims as bug splat. You'd think this was not a message that was needed. We have to tell people that other people are not bugs or numbers, but apparently not.
Exactly. And you hear, on the news every day, 700 Palestinians were killed today in various incursions, and 943 were killed, and 127. We don't hear their names and we don't hear their stories. And that's what We Are Not Numbers is dedicated to doing. And that's what I've been trying to do in the daily poems I've been writing.
Wonderful. Anita Barrows, let's talk about the daily poems, which people can find at poemsforgaza.com, correct?
Right, right.
What are you up to and how did you get started on this?
Well, I've been a poet for most of my life. And when the genocide began, when it became clear after October 7th that Israel was intending to go into Gaza and raze it to the ground, I asked myself what I could do. And I have a big teaching load and a patient load, and I couldn't get up and go there, and nobody can go there anyway unless they're medical professionals now. But I thought, well, I've got this one skill that I can use. I can write poems. And so I started writing poems. I didn't know that I was going to make an absolutely daily commitment of it. But it soon became clear that that was what I was doing. I started out writing notes for poems every day. They weren't whole poems at first. And then after several days, I would put the notes together into a poem. Then at a certain point, a couple months later, they became entire poems. And now I've been writing a whole poem every day for, I don't know, 500 and some odd days.
It's a wonderful thing to do. I think everyone has a different way they can contribute, and darn well should. And you're a poet, you contribute poetry. I think it's perfect. So people can go to poemsforgaza.com and read them, but sometimes it's great to hear them read by the person who wrote them. So if you could choose a poem and read it for us, that would be wonderful.
I'd be so happy to do that. And I really see the poems as a kind of documentation. I've read them a number of times on KPFA radio, Pacifica Radio, and one of the things that has felt very important to me has been to get the poems out in whatever way it's possible. So I'll start with one poem and I'll read more. So this poem, the poems are numbered. Today is day 614, and this morning at about 6 a.m. I wrote poem number 614. But I'm going to read day 529, and day 529 was in March, and it was the day after Israel broke the so-called ceasefire that had lasted since late January. And this poem was inspired by a photograph that I saw of a child. Day 529, the 8-year-old girl, Siwar, sits in a faded armchair that survived months of bombardment outside what must have been her home. Gaza City, ruins behind her. She wears a red and brown sweater, jeans, stained white running shoes with pink laces. Siwar has long fingers, graceful hands, a soft smile. Her brown hair is thin, likely from malnutrition after months of starvation. Maybe her family had taken refuge in the south, walked back to their home after the ceasefire. This night, in the middle of the night, the bombing resumed. The sky filled with planes, the night filled with chaos, noise. This morning, Siwar is dead, who yesterday played outside her house. Dead with 11 members of her family. Dead with her pink shoelaces, her red and brown sweater, her long fingers that might have played some instrument, that might have held a pen, a paintbrush, that might have grasped the limb of a tree she might have climbed to look out on the world, the city beyond her, the sea.
It's very powerful. I like to talk about how obvious it is that we are not numbers and how stupid it is to humanize humans. But it's very powerful when you put details to an individual, and they're not a number. And the repetition of all the things she might have done, it's just far more tragic than a statistic or a news report, you know.
Exactly. And if I have any intention in writing these poems, it's exactly that. It's to show whoever reads them, whoever hears them, these are people. These are human beings. These are not numbers. These are not bug splat. These are people with lives. These are kids like our kids. These are people who had things they could have contributed to our world, and we've lost them.
Are you finding stories in news media or in social media or from friends? How are you learning the material?
Yeah, all of the above. I take a lot of information from my daughter, Nora Barrows Friedman, and her work with the Electronic Intifada. They publish every day and they do a live stream every Thursday morning. That's a major source for me. This particular poem came from a photograph and a story by the journalist Rasha Abu Jalal, who is in Gaza. This was on Dropsite. So I followed Dropsite and Mondo Weiss and Palestine Chronicle. I don't pay much attention to the American mainstream news, I have to say. I do follow Al Jazeera in English. The American mainstream news is just basically giving us the party line, and we don't certainly hear the individual stories very much from them. I get information from my young friends, my mentees through We Are Not Numbers. They send me photographs and they tell me what's happening. And so, yeah, those are my sources. I would say that about 90% of these poems come from real stories, are inspired by actual stories of individuals or families. The other 10% are composites that I have imagined from other things that I've read. I mean, they're all true.
Yes. Would you like to read another one of a different sort?
Sure. Yeah. This is one that came actually from a photograph a friend sent me. I wrote it last week. This photograph was in Al Jazeera. It was a photograph of a child. This is day 608. You could learn every bone in the upper body by studying this photograph of a 5-year-old boy. Naked from the waist up, his wrists like twigs, shoulders like rods, his stick-like arms hang down from. His face narrows from cheeks to chin, comes to a point like a dog's snipey muzzle. His eyes stare at something we cannot see in the photograph, angry, fixed. Is he able to move them? Can he see? Can he turn his head on that filament of a neck? Does he have the strength? The child is 5. He looks like 90, older. He looks as though his life had coursed through him, rumbled over him, wrested from his rigid hands. History, memory. Does his mouth still open? Can he tell us the name of the boy he was? The photograph, which I looked at about 11:30 one night, just as I was about to get ready for bed, totally wiped me out. I mean, I grew up in a Jewish family immediately post-Holocaust. I was born in 47, and my childhood was filled with photographs of people from the concentration camps. And this Palestinian Gazan child looked exactly like that.
Yeah. I don't want to see the photograph for the predictable reasons, but also because I think the poem is so powerful in describing it that I don't need to see the photograph. My thought when you're reading these poems is, these videos I see of my friends in Washington and Ottawa chasing after Congress members and members of parliament saying, when will be enough? How many children? Will you still support it if they've killed every last person? And I'm thinking, if I could just hold them still for 2 minutes and make them listen to this.
Yes.
But of course I can't.
Maybe we could find a way to do that. Blast it on loudspeakers.
Our friends who tried to sail a boat to Gaza and were snatched by the Israelis were forced to watch Israeli curated videos of October the 7th.
Yes, yes, yes. I
You know,
heard
like
that.
Clockwork Orange, you know, eyelids propped open, you know, forced to watch the.
Exactly.
That's not what I want to do to anybody, but I would like the people who say I support Israel to say whether they support what you just read.
Yes, exactly. I know it's terrible. And I know that people who have worked in Gaza, one doctor, American, I think she's Palestinian American, whom my daughter Nora interviewed for the Electronic Intifada podcast, Dr. Mimi Sayed, actually did go to Congress with photographs of the children she had treated in Gaza.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Thank you for joining me. Have a great evening of Just Say No. Thank you. Have a good evening. We're ready for another edition of Just Say No.